Simon, to start with, big weekend, 2 games close together. How you reckon you guys will handle having a nice big hit out this weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's you know, less than 48 hours turnaround, go into the throwdown. We've done worse. I think last year we had to travel from Perth on the Friday night game to get Melbourne in Bendigo or something. So the league clearly likes to have us on a short string with those guns. But no, we're fine. We're pretty healthy at the moment. We've had a pretty good week on the track. Our focus right now is on New Zealand and making sure that we replicate our game from then. And then after that, then we'll start to pay attention to Melbourne United. But up until then, our focus is firmly on New Zealand.
Is it a little tougher to think about the way New Zealand's going to be this weekend, considering they should have Wetzel back, a guy you know well? That they'll be. You think they'd be quite a bit different to last round?
Yeah. I guess going into this round, we sit down as a coaching group and say, okay, if I'm New Zealand, what do I do differently? Or it's not so much a case of like throwing out the playbook and starting again for them. They're fairly meticulous in the way that they run their stuff. It's more about, okay, what wrinkles can they go into that we may have allowed for if they were on cue on the night. So we've gone through last year's playbook for them as well, and just a few things that we were able to take away. What do they go to if we take that away? So we've prepared for some of their countermeasures. But at the same time, it's a lot of personnel driven as well. We've got to make sure we get a better job done. I thought we were really good in the first half with Finn. I thought we let ourselves down a little bit in the second half, giving him a little too much space to operate in, letting him get downhill. And we just got to replicate the performance on the other guys. Obviously, Yanni brings a completely different look for them. He almost commands that a team runs because of his ability to get out and spread the floor. So we've got to make sure we're on point with our defensive transition with him out there. And then also just his rolling on the rim and his offensive rebounding, which hurt us a little bit in the pre-season.
With last weekend, when you look back on it, what did you see? Because the result was a pretty resounding one, but I imagine you would have seen all sorts of things you want to pick up on and get better with.
Yeah, I don't think we were particularly great offensively. I thought we were really rusty, rushed some shots early, settled on mid-range jumpers far too often, and I don't think we were terribly great there. I thought defensively we were excellent. I thought we were able to push them out of what they wanted to accomplish. On most occasions, keeping the one, we were able to turn them over. I thought from a defensive standpoint, we were able to almost replicate the level that we set at the back end of last season in the Melbourne United series, which is kind of a goal that we've set ourselves for the year. Is okay if we can return back time to the level of synchronicity we had as a defensive unit, the tenaciousness that we had. That if we can replicate that in each and every game, we'll put ourselves in a pretty good position to win.
Jochi's going to be someone we're all sort of watching all season. What did you make of how he fit with the group, and how do you think he's fitting offensively? How's he meshing in with the guys, and how are they making use of him?
Yeah, well, not much has been made of it, but Joe was in quarantine up until basically shoot around on the morning of the game. We heard a little bit about New Zealand's preparation. Ours was not too dissimilar, with Joe being in quarantine and obviously with Devon being in quarantine. And leading into that, the week before, we had some guys who had to step out of practice for protocol reasons. So we're a little unsettled at the offensive end, and Joe's not someone we've been able to probably put the time in with that we would like, just with the disruptions that we've faced in pre-season and leading into last week's game. But we've had a little bit of work we've been able to do this week, and we'll be able to get him a little bit more involved.
What's he like in the group? What's he like to try and chat with? What's his demeanour like around the fellas? It looks like he's getting pretty playful. You guys are sort of getting together pretty well for someone so fresh to the
He's
group.
sneaky, mate. Don't buy into all the I don't understand the language stuff. He's across everything. He's real cheeky. Just little things. The other week he's walking past the physio. He's working on his computer, and he walks past. He shuts his computer on him while he's walking past. Just things like that he does. That it brings a little bit of a laughter in the group. Him and Creaky have really hit it off. He's just got a real playfulness about his personality, and that's from like the coaching standpoint that I recognise. Rubes would probably be able to fill in the gaps even more, because the players are around them socially and a little bit more than what the coaching staff is. But that's my impression of him, and he's a really high intellect kid, good to talk to, and he understands the language of basketball, and he understands communication one-on-one. It's when there's more than one voice that he probably needs help, and his English struggles a little bit. But when it's one-on-one, communication's pretty tight. So, he's a ripping bloke. But Rubes, you could probably fill in any gaps there that I missed.
Yeah, no, all the boys really like him, and he's definitely got a humour to him that the boys love. So it's always good to have around.
Simon, has there been any moment yet in the games where you've had an issue communicating, or you've had to sort of repeat a thing, or is it what is the sort of smoothness like out there?
Look, it needs work, but I don't think it's as much of a language barrier as it is just being around each other enough. Generally, if you tell him something, he remembers it, recalls it, and he's good. But when there's communication required out there, and he just hasn't had the repetitions with his teammates as much as we would like at this stage. We'll bring him along slowly. We're not going to go out and throw him for 35 minutes of court time. We'll let him work his way into the group from a physical standpoint and also just a communication standpoint. But it's not been too bad. No different than what it would be with any other player that you bring into the group. So, for instance, the breakdowns that we might have with Joe are no different than the breakdowns we might have with Xavier. It's really about having a new guy in the group, whereas some of the guys that have returned, like a Glizzo and a Rubes, who have played together for a number of years at Brisbane and with us, they just bounce off each other. Their communication's physical. It's almost unspoken. And anytime you bring in new guys, you've got to try to develop that, but it takes years, and that's why when you go back through the years and you got teams that return players and build a really good strong core, they're usually successful because they have that unwritten communication, unspoken communication.
Speaking of Reuben, what's he been like for the group, and what do you make of a fella who's at 250 games when he's barely 27 or whatever?
You 27?
Yeah, 27.
Yeah, 27. We're just having goofing around before, like he's the old man of the league, but he's the youngest old man floating around. I think he's 12 months younger than Sunday Detch, and everyone kind of looks at Sunday as being a young up-and-comer. He's a ripper, a real leader in our ball club. Not the most boisterous leader floating around, but he's got a quiet, calm, strong demeanour. The New Zealand guys certainly rally around him, but the Australian blokes all look up to him as well. His toughness, hardness, IQ. He's such a big piece. As soon as he walked in the door for us, he's been a really big piece of what we want now and into the future. And tremendous player. I think maybe too much focus was put on shooting from last year. They're good shots that he takes. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. But everything else, his versatility at the defensive end, his ability off the dribble, and I think improved finishing ability, and just his IQ, spacing the floor, when to get on the rim, when to space the floor, when to cut, when to hold. He's just got that in spades, and defensively he's just always in the right spot. And if ever there's a breakdown and there's two guys kind of looking at each other and one of them's Rubes, I just yell at the other bloke because I know he's probably done the right thing.
That's a pretty good wrap, Reuben. What's it like to be at 250 games? It's sort of a bit of a shock to see that sort of figure next to your name.
Yeah, it is pretty shocking, but it's just another game for me. But it's been a long journey, but it seems to go by pretty quickly, and definitely enjoying my time here at the Phoenix.
Simon mentioned your leadership and your defence and things. Who did you base that stuff on? Where did you sort of develop that within your own game?
I think my first year in the league, I was around guys like Mika Vicona and Dylan Boucher and stuff like that. So I got to learn from some of the best on defence. And then I was around a lot of leaders like CJ Bruton and Tom Abercrombie and stuff like that. So I got to learn from the best when I was coming into the league, and it kind of just stuck with me throughout my career.
Do you still think on what good fortune that was to have that sort of development? Because some guys end up in teams where they're losing or whatever, yet you're with guys who are winning week in, week out.
Yeah, it was definitely eye-opener. I got to see what winning was like firsthand, and then I also got to see what losing was like firsthand. So I think bringing 2 and 2 together, I don't ever want to be in the losing situation again, but trying to bring the winning things from the winning cultures into this team.
What sort of pride do you take from the way you've built up a career beyond the Breakers? Because I mean, you were sort of there for so long, and then you've done well in Brisbane, done well here, sort of really made a spot for yourself in the league.
Yeah, like I said, it's been a long journey. I've been learning throughout my whole career. But just taking little bits from every season into the next season, so I can keep developing and growing as a player.
And what sort of development have you seen in the Phoenix side going from last season into this season? And where do you see this group's at as a title contender, as a team chasing to be among the best?
It's hard to say, but we honestly just got deeper. We have 2 players in every position that can play 30 minutes. We just got to believe that we're that team now, that we're one of the teams that everyone's going to be chasing.
Just finally, I know you've been in all sorts of different situations, had different teammates, but at the start of the season when they announced they're bringing in Jochi, what were you sort of expecting from having a guy, you know, from such a different country to the ones we usually bring guys in from?
Yeah, well, all we'd heard about him and all the highlights that we'd seen, we knew he was definitely going to be a hooper, and he's definitely showed that in this month or 2 that he's been here. So it's awesome to have Jochi around, and he's an awesome bloke as well.
I'm all good. Daniel, you got anyone else? Or oh, sorry, Simon. One more about Devon. Where's he up to, or what's the sort of update on where's he at?
Midnight tonight. He's eligible to leave his home, so he'll be at shoot around tomorrow. Introduce him to the guys, and yeah, we'll we'll put him in a uniform the week after maybe. I'm not going to throw him out there. We've got way too much to cover for him to sort of try and take on board in a short amount of time. I feel like it'd be extraordinarily unsettling for this group to jam him in there and try and get him a role. So he'll start training with us early next week.